All right. Welcome to Greasy time, everybody. We're live. I think I figured out my little technical difficulties. So Lord have mercy, man. I hope you're all having a good time. Welcome to Greasy time. How's everybody doing out there? We got Dr. Funkenstein bringing you into the show today. So anyway, I hope you're having a good week. I hope you're doing well. I sure hope that everybody's hanging in there out there. I've been cutting a lot of stuff down here in the House of Grease. We actually cut a thing that I'm gonna put up here to premiere here in a little bit. We actually had a socially distant guest in the House of Grease, along with myself and Adam, the great Michael Zimmerman, one of my favorite musicians on the planet, funky bass player from up in Michigan, and a dear friend. If you're tuning in, I love you, brother. So anyway, we actually wrote and recorded something that we're going to play here in a little bit, because I'm trying to debut new music every week that we make down here. And man, I got to tell you how much fun I'm having, and I'm really, I really dig getting messages from people that they dig it too, because it's really just, it's organic. Whoa, hey, ho. It's really organic. It's just me and Adam, and in this case Zimmerman, having some fun and trying to do something that we think is cool. And when other people dig it, it's really, really hip, It makes me feel good. So anyway, I'd like to, kick off the show. I'd like to do a tune by somebody that I love very much. I'd like to do a tune by the great Curtis Mayfield. Got some questions about Curtis. I did a post last night on social media about him, and so I'll get to those in a minute. But I wanted to do a little version of one of my favorite tunes, which is actually from his first album as a solo artist, Curtis. And this goes like this. Child, and don't you cry. Your folks might understand you by and by. Just move on up to your destination. Though you may find from time to time complications, baby. You cannot slip. For you, and no charge for mistakes and out of tune notes and out of time notes. So before I go any further, I'd just like to throw my logo up there because we all fancy here on Greasy Time, and I'll put my Venmo and my PayPal down at the bottom. Really appreciate it. If you throw some money in the tip jug and help me here at the House of Grease. I really appreciate it. So, moving on up. We're going to go right now to the section of the show where I talk about my records of the week. And my first record of the week, this week, is, one I've been listening to for 15 years. This is Eddie Hazel, who I talk about all the time. This is his record, Games, Dames, and Guitar Things. Obviously, huge fan of his from Funkadelic. He does a really good version of California Dreamin', and he does a really awesome version of I Want You, She's So Heavy, the Beatles tune. And he was part of P-Funk Nation. If y'all aren't hip, Michael Zimmerman, the bass player, he turned me on to finally got a Hulu subscription to watch Tales from the Tour Bus. Mike Judge from King of the Hill and Beavis and Butthead, and also the longtime bass player of my good friend Anson Thunderbird. Finally, I've binge watched that. I know I'm late to the party on that, but God, is it good. And the James Brown one, and the George Clinton one, and the Bootsy one, and oh man, it's so good. Waylon Jennings, all those people. But at any rate, Eddie Hazel was, part of George Clinton's P-Funk Nation. He was part of Funkadelic and made some great solo records. And so this is a great record. Funky, psychedelic, trippy. Highly recommend. Was listening to that quite a bit this past week. My next record of the week is Antibalas, who I'm actually sporting their shirt today. I try and wear shirts of things that I really love, whether it's a saying or whether it's like a record store or music store that I'm good friends with, or bands I really like, or labels that I really like, So anyway, I'm sporting my Antibalas today. But anyway, back to their record. This is they have a new record out called The Foo Chronicles, which is awesome. This is their record. I think this is from like 2011 or 2012. This is just as good as Afrobeat in the modern world gets. I love their tune Dirty Money, which starts this record. It's I think, yeah. That kind of thing, you know, playing that fela, just the way it's supposed to be played, man. So anyway, I love this record. You know, they're part of the Daptone family of soul. Big fan of theirs and have been for quite some time. I know this is Adam, who plays drums with me, one of his favorite modern groups too. From Brooklyn, from the vibrant, incredibly vibrant Brooklyn underground scene. And this next record, moving on, this is a classic record amongst musicians that I know, the Chicken Fat record by Mel Brown. This is like really cool, kind of bluesy jazz, very typical of the Impulse label from the late 60s. I think this is from 67, 68. And Mel Brown played guitar for Bobby Bland for quite a long time. As did the great Wayne Bennett, who I'm also a real big fan of. My buddy Kelly Finnegan, whose record just dropped today out on Coal Mine Records. We were Instagram. He posted a thing at Bobby Bland the other night. We went back and forth for a second talking about Bobby Bland, being hip to Bobby Bland. Get yourself 2 steps from the blues and go from there. So anyway, Mel Brown, he played guitar in that band. Mel Brown came up playing with the great Johnny Otis, again, same as Jimmy Nolan, who played with James Brown. Mel Brown followed him in that band, Johnny Otis being the incredible, multi-talented bluesman who is the father of the great Shuggie Otis. A lot of great guys came out of his band. Mel Brown's one of them. And, you know, this type of record, you know, it's just that really kind of cool 60s, you know, that kind of deal. And big fan of it. You know, it's a great morning record. I don't know about y'all. I mean, I'm a huge, you know, obviously a huge vinyl nut, and I listen to jazz in the morning. Jazz goes good in the morning. Whether it's organ trio, I was listening to Brother Jack McDuff. I did a post about that this week too, and got a lot of cool private messages from people. I listen to jazz in the morning. Listen to psychedelic music and funk music and freak out music at night, or low down blues, you know. So moving on, this is another record that initially I got turned on to by Adam. This is the Mayfield brothers. These are these guys from Germany, and this is a record called In the Raw. This again is just one of the most low down, funkiest records I've ever, you know, in modern time. I think this is like 10 years old now. But what's funny is I'd heard Adam playing this in the van, and I knew of the Mayfield brothers. And I remember one time, like, I was just completely knocked out. This is in the van at some point. I don't remember when it was, but we were driving, and I was like, he was playing it, and I was like, what the hell is this? And he was like, you know, all too happy to tell me about the Mayfield brothers. And so anyway, the other day I was going through my Spotify playlists, and I was listening to all different types of stuff, hanging with my little daughter, and I came across this, not really thinking, oh, this is that record that Adam loves. And I started listening to it, and you know, a few minutes into it, I was like, wait a minute, I've heard this, I've listened to this before. This is really, really familiar. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is that record that Adam loves. So anyway, I listened to this a bunch this week. This is a fantastic record, and I say that about every record, but I mean it. And the last record of the week this week is a record that my good friend Adam Bednarik, who's another funky bass player here in Nashville, very dear friend of mine, and produced the last Justin Townes Earl record, which is great. You should go listen to that. He's playing bass on it too. This is the Al Michaels Affair, which is another really awesome modern day band, and this album in particular he hit me to, the 37th Chamber. This is them Enter the 37th Chamber, as it is, which is a play on words. If you're a Wu-Tang Clan fan, then you'll understand the reference. This is them doing, like, you know, funk versions, if you will, funk experimental psychedelic versions of Wu-Tang tracks, and it's just, I don't know, it's just really, really cool, man. I really dig it. So there you have it. That's those are my records of the week. So they're all those are available on Spotify, so you should be able to find them. So I wanted to answer a question. There's a buddy that wrote in asking in particular about Curtis Mayfield, and asking the difference. I thought this was a good question. The difference between his playing early on with the Impressions and later on in, like, his solo career. And first of all, you know, Curtis tuned to the black keys of a piano, like F sharp to F sharp, and which led to some really easy fingerings to do that kind of stuff, all the Curtis stuff, you know. So the biggest difference, I think, now there's probably going to be multiple opinions here, but, you know, the Impressions era of Curtis epitomizes that beautiful, clean, woody. I think the first person, I don't remember who I first heard. Several people call it butterfly guitar playing. My good friend Gary Bohannon calls it Chinese guitar. I don't know why, but you know, the double stop. I guess that's the kind of Japanese, you know. So the early style, and I can't do it just like, I mean, I just do it the way that I do it, but the early style of Curtis is that beautiful, clean, woody butterfly guitar playing, personified, in a really big ensemble. You know, there's a lot of big brass on the Impressions records. There's a lot of, you know, they're very lush recordings. When he started making his solo records, you know, he made a drastic change to his presentation, with concentrating on the rhythm section, which that band was just the greatest band. You know, I don't think enough people talk about that band as a unit. because that band. They didn't necessarily play on the first the first solo record, Curtis, but from Roots, which is the second record, which I actually prefer Roots over. I probably listen. I don't prefer it. That's a terrible statement, but I listen to Roots more. It's one of those things where it's like I've heard Curtis a million times. I've heard Superfly 40 million times. So I listen to Roots more often if I'm listening to Curtis Mayfield for pleasure. You know, if I'm going to put a Curtis record on, I'm probably more apt to put Roots on, or live Curtis. I never can get enough of that record. But the band, you know, just small band, you know, 2 guitars, bass, drums, and conguero, as they used to say. Conguero is the term. A lot of those guys, Donny Hathaway and those guys, would say conguero. And anyway, just amazing stuff. And Curtis later, his guitar playing was you know, he became the wah-wah guy in his band. The other guitarist, who I know I'll remember his name in 5 minutes, and I can't believe I'm forgetting his name right now, but he would play the more the kind of meat and potatoes, you know, like I'd move on up and he would do that, where Curtis would be like do atmospheric stuff, or you know, and obviously I'm not in his tuning, so I'm not playing that right, but you know, for Freddie's Dead. He would just do, you know, Curtis would play all the wah-wah parts, and he would, you know, his guitar playing like kind of took a back seat on the later recordings. However, every once in a while, especially on demos, there's a really good demo of Underground on the deluxe version of, I think it's the deluxe version of Curtis, actually, where he puts the fuzz tone on, and he used one of those Maestro, the big, huge, not the single Maestro fuzz tone, but the big thing that Miles Davis used that had like a drum machine and all this other weird filters in it. It's big, it's huge, it's like the size of a phone book. And Curtis used to use that. You can see some footage of him with that sitting on his amp, and he would turn around and hit the button. And you know, that's where my love of this kind of fuzz, which this is my Jack's fuzz wah. That, because it gets that sound, as well as Michael Tolles and Eddie Hazel and all those guys I talk about all the time. So anyway, that's kind of the quick way I can kind of answer that. I'd like to do another tune for you, if that's okay. Actually, after I do this tune, this is a tune that's going to be on my new record. There's a bunch of announcements coming soon. Things are, you know, starting to kind of move forward. I'm patiently optimistic with how things are going in the world, but at the same time, you know, like I went into Carter Vintage the other day to actually shoot some, you know, my first outing really of the pandemic, to shoot some demo videos for them. And you know, I had my mask on, I had my gloves, and we were socially distant. We were far apart from one another, and you know, they were on the other side of the room, but when we were shooting videos, and they were like, man, you know, we're far enough away, you can take your mask off if you want for the videos. And I was like, no, I'm gonna leave it on, as a kind of a, you know, just for solidarity, you know, because, you know, a lot of people have died, and the least I can do is cover my mouth up and my nose, you know. And so I was happy to do it. It was great to see all those people, though. the people at Carter's. It was great to see Walter, and you know, it was great to see him. It was very emotional, as I'm sure all of you are kind of going through as well, you know, as we start to open up. But at any rate, I'm going to play the song. This is a song I've been playing for a minute, but it's on my new record that's going to come out later this summer. And like I said, there's a bunch of updates coming, and looks like we may get back out on the road. There's a ton of stuff booked. Whether or not we get to it and it's something that is feasible and can be done, you know, just gonna have to wait and see, you know. But this is a tune called "One of Those Days," which is one of my favorites, and there's some incredible stuff being worked on by some incredible people that I'm working with for the release of this track in particular. And after I do it, maybe we'll do a little giveaway. Okay? So here's something for y'all, okay? Just want those days. Ooh. Well, I tried to stop from letting myself go. There's nothing worse, baby, than being alone. Ain't gonna let it. Won't waste another minute. It's okay. Just one of those days. Another minute. It's okay. It's just one of those days. Ooh, just one of those days, baby. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, folks. I don't know why I'm saying that. I'm by myself. Well, I know you're out there. So, anyway. So, yeah, that's a track called One of Those Days, which is going to be on my new record. And guess what I got? I've got a vinyl of my new record. This isn't going to come out until the end of August. and we worked really hard on this record. I'm not going to tell you that much about it because we got a lot of stuff coming out. But I did a giveaway last night on the socials, which was really fun. The photo of George Clinton that I used as the opening to the show tonight. I wanted to know who it was. I wanted you guys to type in who it was. So I've got a similar type of contest to win this vinyl here on the Greasy Time show tonight. So I don't have my comments enabled because I got too much going on, and also I'm way too ADD to like try and do what I'm doing and keep track. I go back afterwards and answer questions and so on. I do read them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a photo right now, and the first person who comments the correct answer of who it is going to get this vinyl here. Let me put it up the right way, which does come with a high res download as well of the brand new record that's not going to come out until August. Can't get this yet. We haven't even announced it yet. Exclusives here on Greasy Time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this photo up right now, and so I'll preface this. It's a very famous rhythm section in soul music, okay? And it's two guys. It's bass player and drummer. Bass player is pretty darn easy to know who it is. Drummers, for some people at least, is a little harder, okay? So, you ready? First person to comment the correct answer wins the vinyl, okay? This photo right here. Who's that drummer and who's that bass player? These titans of R&B music from Detroit. The soul, if you will, of Motown. Okay? I'll leave it up for another second. So somebody may have already won. Like I said, I don't have it enabled right now, but I will go back through and find it. So that drummer and that bass player. All right? So to whoever got it right, congratulations. You got a vinyl copy of my new record that doesn't come out for months, and we haven't even done the official announcement yet. Okay? So, anyway, congratulations. Trying to give back here. You guys are giving me a lot, and I appreciate you being so kind to me. So, before I get to the big reveal, which is the debut of the Battle of Wills, which is a psych, fuzz, funk epic that myself, Adam Abershoff, and Michael Zimmerman put together this week, that our fine cracking staff here at the House of Grease edited a nice video for. I'm going to just talk just a little bit about the journey to where I'm at right now, just a little bit, because I get a lot of questions, and I actually did a Skype lesson with a young talented man from Canada, Brandon. I love you, brother. If you're tuning in, I love you. Had a great time the other day, and the great joy of getting to do these live streams, of getting to do the Greasy Time show, is getting to share all these things with you, with all you that care to check it out. And I'm obviously obsessive about music, and I've worked really hard, to not only like voraciously listen to music and try and like really dissect things that I really like and try and learn from it, but also just as a musician, I've worked really, really hard. And I was actually talking to my dear friend Nick, if you're watching, Nick Savigny up in Boston. I love you to death, and we were talking earlier today, and he's a brother, and I love him, and his channel, is an awesome channel. The Riff with Nick Savigny. Go check it out. Follow him, like him, watch his videos. He's turned me onto a lot of stuff. Which actually, I'm going to pause for a minute because I realized I didn't talk about the rig of the week, and there's actually a couple things I want to talk about. So actually, I'll talk about that in a minute. We'll get to that in a minute. I'll stay on track. How's that? See, I told you I have ADD. But the journey. I moved to Nashville when I was 21, or right before I turned 21, and the town was a lot smaller then, in the mid to late 2000s, and I moved to town really thinking that I was cool, that I was good, you know. Because I've been gigging since I was 8-9 years old, and you know that stigma of being a young guy playing and have everybody tell you how great you are, you know, all that kind of stuff. And when I moved to Nashville, it was just like I got smacked in the face with the greatest musicians on the planet, and learned really quick, you know, where I really stood, and how far I was. And it was daunting, and it was. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't call it depressing, but it was discouraging, because I'd never seen the amount of talent that was here, gigging everywhere, playing every bar. And it wasn't just guitar players; it was bass players, it was drummers, it was keyboardists, it was everybody. And so, you know, I've told this story a million times, but, you know, the thing that helped me the most was when I got in Don Kelly's band. Don Kelly started his band here in Nashville in the very early 80s, late 70s, and his alumnus of musicians, you know, everybody talks about his guitar players because it's an incredibly impressive list, you know. Brent Mason was his first guitarist, who's a session legend and played on a million hit records, and after that, you know, guys like Troy Lancaster and Joe Manuel, who played with Merle Haggard, and Red Volkart, who's, you know, probably the finest Telecaster country guitarist in the world, I would say. The great Johnny Hyland, Guthrie Trapp, who was before me in the band, who is one of the finest pickers on the planet, and the great Kenny Vaughan, who plays with Marty Stewart. You know, they're all alumnus, but drummers and bass players. I mean, the guy who got me the gig is the great Dave Rowe, who played bass with Johnny Cash for a decade or so, and now he does all the stuff with Dan Arbach, and has, you know, one of the most prolific, successful session bassists in town, in the world. But you know, I was pretty down on my luck. I was going to pack it all in and go home, and I went. You know, I was going to get kicked out of the place I was renting a room in, and I went down on the street corner down on Broadway to just play on the street and try and make a little bit of money. And really, I was feeling sorry for myself. You know, I was, you know, to say that I was as down as I've ever been in my life, I just about was. I mean, I had nowhere to go, and was out of money, and you know, just, I was going to give up, you know. And Dave Rowe walked by and said, he knew me, and he was like, come meet Don. He took pity on me. And I went in and met Don at Robert's Western World downtown, and Guthrie was playing guitar, and, you know, I'd never played bluegrass and all that stuff before, ever, and I loved it and appreciated it, and maybe mucked around a little bit, but I you know. But here's the thing, it's a combination of things. I was so down on my luck and so desperate, combined with being young and stupid and ambitious. Don gave me a chance. I was not the right guy for that band for a long time, but I worked hard, man. I my wife, who I met shortly after this happened, like literally like within weeks, my wife reminds me, my dear wife Karen reminds me of how I would get up every morning and practice all the stuff that was necessary for the Don Kelly Band gig all day, relentlessly, without stopping. And then I'd go play the gig, and then for the longest time I was really discouraged because of how inconsistent my performances were. And so I'd come home and I'd practice for several more hours before I went to sleep. And this went on for, you know, at least a year. This level of, like, the hardest I've ever worked in my life at anything. And that's important. You know, that made me who I am. And I'm proud of that. And at the same time, incredibly grateful for the opportunity, because had I not gotten that gig and gotten my ass handed to me on a daily basis, because the other thing about Don, and I could go on and on about this, is, you know, Don, he did not hire me. You know, it was a full year of filling in for Guthrie, and then even a few months after Guthrie officially left the band for good, before I had the gig, like, full time. So what would happen was, he would call me, Don would call me to come, he would call me in the afternoon or the morning and say, you know, can you play tonight? And I'd say yeah, because I had nothing else. And I'd go play, and he would give me my money that night, and I wouldn't know if that was my last night playing with him. I never knew if that night that, you know, I basically, it was like I never, you know, I was always that far from being fired. And so, you know, it took, you know, a year of that. And like I said, like, Guthrie left the band full time, and it was probably at least 3 months of playing 4 or 5 days a week, not knowing if I'd be back the next night. You talk about pressure. So, you know, that did several things. One, it really, you know, instituted a lot of determination on my part to continue that stamina of working that hard. But also it kind of desensitized me, like, you know, to pressure in certain regards. Because you just get used to it, you know. And by the time I got that gig, you know, there was always important people coming in the club every night, whether it was Nora Jones or whether it was T-Bone Burnett, or whether it was, you know, Dan Auerbach or Patrick from the Black Keys, or whether it was James Burton, or whether it was, you know, my hero Reggie Young used to come and sit, you know, just a few feet in front of me and sit there all night with his lovely wife Jenny. And it's like, you know, you get used to the pressure. You get used to not, because, you know, I've told this many times to people, but, like, the misconception about kicking ass, playing music is like, you know, like, roar, that sort of, like, almost athletic football or sports mentality of, like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to kill. And there is elements of that, but it's like, you want to fight adrenaline. You want to kind of, like, learn how to control manicness, because you want to be cool, calm, and collected. Because when you truly play your best, it's when you're cool, calm, and collected. And I'm not talking about, like, being mellow, because you can be incredibly intense and still be calm. Okay, and that's the most lasting thing that I've taken from that gig. And just going over some things that I learned in that band, you know, doing the bluegrassy kind of stuff, you know, had to learn really quick how to do all that kind of stuff for hours and hours and hours on end. And I couldn't develop the sort of real way that you chicken pick, which is using your middle finger to pluck. I still can't do it. And so I flat pick everything. And you can hear, like, even on, a guitar that's not meant for that kind of music. Well, I shouldn't say that. Any guitar is meant for any kind of music. That's how I feel. But it's like playing Back by the Bridge to get that twangy sound on a Telecaster or any guitar, and then palm muting with my palm. So that's something that still stays with me, and I actually find in playing funk guitar, a lot of the things that I learned playing country music and playing bluegrass are applicable, because they're both really clean and they're both really articulate. And a lot of that stuff, obviously funk guitar is a lot more simplified, but I'll throw that stuff in. It's still a part of me. It's still in how I phrase, And another thing that I love is we would do some Western swing kind of stuff. I'm sorry to be in the key of G. That's just what I'm just into the key of G today. So, but stuff. I used to love it because, it has a lot in common with sort of jump blues, which I really like, That kind of thing. Because, they really were. Johnny Gimbel, who played with the great Bob Wills, he had a great quote that I've heard Willie Nelson say a million times, where it's like, there's only two songs that human beings have ever written, and that's Star Spangled Banner and the blues. I don't really necessarily agree with that, but I think the sentiment of it is funny. So those lessons stay with me, man. Those were great days. Obviously led to my session career, and which is a whole nother episode, whole nother story. But it all goes back to that one day playing on the street corner, and I wouldn't have met my wife. I wouldn't have, my life would be completely different. There's no two ways about it. And I think everybody has similar notions of pivotal points in their life, but mine is pretty distinct. And very grateful to Don Kelly for having me in his band and giving me a chance, because I certainly was not the right guy for that band for a while. And he gave me a shot anyway. So God bless you, Don. Okay, so what I want to do right now is I want to talk about gear, and then we're gonna end the show with the debut of the new video and song. How's that sound? Okay, so my rig of the week is kind of multifaceted this week because there's several things I want to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is my dear friend Rick Weaver sent me an updated version of his Violet Vibe, which he's calling the Midnight Vibe, which is absolutely fantastic, and I love it. It's just great, and Rick is a great guy, and I've got it down here, and I'll Weaver Effects. Check him out. He makes great fuzzes and other stuff like that. I love you, brother. You're a great man, and you sure are a good friend to me. I'm not quite sure why, but I really appreciate you. So the big difference on this vibe pedal, which here's the everything, that's just fantastic. But the thing that's cool about the Midnight Vibe is it's got this switch on it, which you can switch between the chorus and vibrato mode. So that's the normal kind of chorus mode. I like the vibrato mode. So that's the Weaver Midnight Vibe. I love this thing. God bless you, Rick, for being a good dude and part of my rig of the week. Check out my good man. So the next thing is, I know I've been talking about some of the same stuff for a couple of weeks, but I just can't help myself, folks. My trusty Ampeg Gemini 1, I love this thing. That's why I'm playing through here. I just love this damn thing. It's just the greatest. It records amazing. It sounds great. I love it. It's like a better version of a Fender. I love it. The other thing I want to talk about is my dear friends, Gil and Nicole Devine at Divine Noise. They make all my, all the cables I use, all these Cola cables and stuff like that. These are some of my favorite people on the planet. If you're tuning in, I love you, Gil and Nicole. They're just groovy people. I love them, and I've been using their stuff for quite a long time. And every time we go through Portland, we hang out, go get pizza. It's a groovy thing. Gil's a good man. And his lovely wife is sweet too. Good people. I love them. So anyway, I wanted to talk about them. They're part of it. I don't talk about them enough. They're the best. The other thing, so get on Divine Noise and get yourself some cables because it's the best. I've been using the same one for quite a long time, and that's saying something for me because I beat the crap out of stuff. I'm in love with this guitar. I know it's a cheap guitar, and I've got my lovely red 335 over here and my ES5 and everything. But I love this darn thing. This old Silvertone 1446, I guess is what it's called. Um, I don't know. It just does what I want it to do. It's really easy to play, and it's funky, and it sounds. I just love the way it sounds. I like the Bigsby. I love it. I might put some different pickups in it. I might put um, some old gold foils. Nick actually hit me to an eBay auction of some old gold foils, but they're the ones from the 50s. They're the ones that are really great. I don't know. I might try them in this. I might not. They were cheap. This guitar is perfect, kind of as is. So I might just leave it alone. So stay tuned for that. So that's it. Those handful of things. The Midnight Vibe, this, and the Ampeg are just kind of rocking my world. These are the same strings that have been on here for 2 weeks now, and these are pure nickel round cores. I've actually been experimenting. I'll let the cat out of the bag here. These are Kurt Mangum round core pure nickels. These, again, Nick and my good friend Dan from Dan Drive turned me on to these guys. I believe they're in Colorado, and round pure nickel round core strings are like strings used to be made, back in the 60s. Strings are made very different nowadays, and they tend to be brighter, and they have this sound. And I've been doing a lot of, obviously a ton of recording. So I just ordered some because I wanted to try them. I've been using other stuff for quite a long time, and I wanted to give it a shot. So I put them on some of my other guitars, and I really dig them. And these have been on here since I got this guitar. And they're perfect now because I like the sound of old strings. Just gets that sound, man. So anyway, so there's some gear for you. So we've come to that time in the show. We're gonna do the big debut. Y'all ready? It's kind of long. It's not 20 minutes or anything. It's not even 15 minutes. I think it's like 10 minutes long. This is a track called The Battle of the Wills, Part 1 and 2. The first part is kind of a dreamy sort of spaghetti western, moody kind of instrumental vibe, and then it goes into like a breakneck James Brown kind of part 2. And this is something that we all put together down here in the House of Grease. I've really been working hard on my engineering and everything else, and really having fun kind of exploring that aspect, which I've never really had the time to. And everybody, the response last week, the response to the last several instrumentals has been really great, and so. But in particular, there's a lot of views of the Big Rub last week, and a ton of comments and private messages and stuff. So I'm going to try and do a new one of these every week with a video to accompany it. And I just really appreciate you taking the time. So without further ado, sit yourself down if you're not. I assume you probably are, and I hope you enjoy the latest offering from here in the House of Grease. Ladies and gentlemen, here's the premiere of The Battle of the Wills. There you have it. Premiere. I hope you all dug it. I literally finished it at like 4 o'clock this afternoon. It was, that's one of the beauties of, the beauty of this pandemic time is, for me at least, is I've had a lot of time to devote to things that I normally wouldn't. That's not to at all discount the tragedy, the inconvenience, the loneliness, all of the negative aspects. And I hope from the bottom of my heart that you're taking care of yourself. I was personally in this last week, I was losing it. Monday, Tuesday in particular, and because I wasn't doing specific things to take care of myself, mentally, psychologically, spiritually, and so I kind of, did all of the things I know I need to do to have a chance at being okay. And it's a day-to-day, minute-to-minute thing, But I will say this, that it's like the opportunity to get to prepare these live streams, to work on new music for you all, the opportunity to try and become a better engineer, to try and become, at least an adequate video editor, to at least make things that I think are funny or entertaining to me. Whether or not it is to other people, I don't know. I hope you dig it, but I think they're funny or entertaining at the very least. And those are things I wouldn't have time for. And more importantly than all of that, I have had an incredible amount of time with my family, and I love my family and my wife and my daughter and my mother-in-law, and close friends like Adam Abershoff, my longtime musical soulmate. If you're watching, I love you, brother. Getting to make music with him every week is a huge blessing, because I think he's one of the best musicians on the planet, and I'm honored to get to work with him. And great to get to collaborate and work with another guy that I think is one of the best musicians on the planet, Mr. Michael Zimmerman. Love you, buddy, if you're tuning in. So please take care of yourselves. If there's anything that I can do to help in any way, that's what the direct message feature of Facebook and Twitter and Instagram are for. I do go in and read them and try and answer all of them, and so if there's anything you need, I'm here to help if I can. And if nothing else, I hope that you've enjoyed yourself tonight, and I certainly have. This is one of my favorite ones that I've done so far. Until next time, if you care to contribute, the Venmo and PayPal are there at the bottom. Very much appreciated, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. And but even more so, thank you for tuning in. And take care of yourselves, and may the force be with you always. And always keep it greasy, okay? See you next time.